Pablo here, and welcome to another episode of the Pseudopodcast, the podcast that really isn't a podcast, where I sit down with really cool people and talk about all things fantasy, reading, writing, and I might divert and talk about anything and everything at the same time. Today I've got David here with me. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Ready to talk about whatever, books, fantasy, booktube. Let's get into it.
That is the right attitude. Would you like to introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure. Yeah. My name is David Decero. I have a channel under the same name where I talk about fantasy and everything near it. So if you like fantasy books, particularly The Eye of the World and The Wheel of Time, that's what I'm reading right now. Check that out.
That is your homework, guys. You need to go and check David's channel. Okay, so as you may or may not know, we are sort of part of like a nice little group that we call the House of Dragons. There's a couple of booktubers and where David is part of, so he's a really good friend of mine on booktube. And I had a question for you, David. As we give you a lot of grief with being the old man of the group and being the experienced soul. Yeah. When exactly did you join booktube? Was it because we were talking about the other day and you said something about like 9 years ago or something like that?
So I've been following along booktube for, it seems like forever, for years. I remember like watching Pullin' Bananas and the original like big three of booktube, and watching Cam Wolf. He's been there since early on, and like AuthorTube too with Jenna Moresi. I've been a fan of booktube, I'd say, for years. And then around 2018, I uploaded my first video, and I didn't take it like super seriously because I don't know, it was just like I had got back from Worldcon in 2018, and I was like, there's all these people meeting at this con who are friends online. They're part of like various groups. Like there's a group for like Game of Thrones, group for this book, group for that, and they're all like happy to see each other in person. I was like, man, at the time I wasn't on social media at all, and I was like, I am missing out on making friends with other people who read. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna put out a video, and I did. And then I would put out a video or two and then go like 6 months with nothing. and then I'd upload another video and be like, oh, hey, here's a random book review, and then disappear for another 5 months. And then I would say didn't really take it seriously until September of 2020. That's when I started uploading on like a regular basis. And since then, I've been pretty consistent.
That's cool. That's interesting to know. I actually thought, back when we were talking about it, I actually thought that you started much earlier than you did. It's interesting as well because I sort of started around the same time. I started December 2020, so like 3 months after you.
I've seen other people talk about this too. Near the end of 2020, there were so many cool and new and interesting channels that popped up. Like there's yours, there was Jake's man caring thing. There was
Jake, I love him.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
And then there were so many around that time period, which I think probably inspired me to keep pushing, because before that, there was not a ton of adult fantasy booktubers.
Yeah.
It was mostly YA was the overwhelming majority, which is great. You know, that's a cool genre and everything, but I just don't read a lot of it. I just, I read adult fantasy. And so it's like when I first uploaded a video, I didn't really know who to interact with, who to reach out. Like I was trying to interact with people that were reading stuff totally different, and it wasn't the same as when you meet another fantasy fan and you could actually like be excited and be like, oh, have you read this? Oh, if you like this, check out this. And man, so end of 2020, adult fantasy booktube, I feel like really started blowing up. And now we have so many cool creators.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a big part of it is, and at least it applies for me, is towards the end of 2020, a lot of people got into the whole booktube scene during the first lockdown, or first couple of lockdowns in the pandemic. And then I think a lot of us sort of thought, well, I could do this. Like, I've been a fan of booktube for a while. I love reading books. I love talking about books. I'm going to give it a try. You think there's something there?
Oh, absolutely. I remember there's a couple channels in particular, like Joe's Review Journal, I think was one of them, or Joe's Book Reviews. Another really cool channel. He popped up because of the pandemic. And then I think once he went back to work, he kind of stopped, disappeared. But again, at him, and then Sandra Gibbons, I think that was another one. She's popped up, I think, because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And because I noticed they both talked about Prince of Thorns. So I was like, I have to follow those channels.
I have to get on that one.
Yeah. But yeah, totally agree. Pandemic for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned you're reading at the moment The Wheel of Time. How is it going?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. I have to say that's such a lovely edition, man. I hate when like we're buddy reading and we've got different editions, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had that one.
This is the only time I'll probably be able to be like, the US edition maybe looks a little better.
Yeah.
Normally,
no, definitely.
You guys get all the best covers. But this edition just showed off real quick. Like, you can't see it.
I just saw. I'll see it in editing.
There we go.
Oh, look at that map! Oh my god, that is so cool. That is sick.
Colorful, comes with its own little bookmark.
Yeah, and it's got the logo in the front as well.
Yeah, I hate it.
So cool.
I hate it so far. It's terrible.
It's awful, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, it's just the worst book. It's definitely.
I can see 20 people going, "What is this?"
No.
Unsubscribe.
But no, I'm actually loving it so far. The funny thing, the biggest criticism that I keep hearing is that it's a Lord of the Rings ripoff. But the thing is, I love Lord of the Rings. So give me anything near that, and I'll probably be happy. It just feels like the way they're setting up the story, it feels like it's going to be big. Like this is going to be a huge fantasy adventure. And if I'm not mistaken, Moraine, I butcher everything.
Moraine? Yeah, Sedai, basically.
Yeah. So it's my understanding she's basically the Gandalf of this story, right?
I think
just younger and cooler. Right. And so I'm super excited. And I see Rosamund Pike is going to play her in the TV show. And I remember watching her in Gone Girl, where she plays a psychopath.
Oh, that is such a good film.
Yes. And then seeing her play this character, man, I'm excited. I don't know. How are you feeling?
No, I'm so excited. I am so excited for that's. I don't want to say that's the sole reason I started The Wheel of Time, because I already had the book and I did start the book a year ago. But the hype, it's undeniable. The hype, it just sort of it makes you it puts you in the mood to start. And definitely, I picked it right back up. And that's the thing. It happened with American Gods for me. And it doesn't happen often. You stop reading for a while and then you carry on reading, and yeah, some details are a bit in your mind you can't really remember what happened, but the how quickly you get back into the story, and it feels like it's flowing. And it was a year ago when I stopped, so that's like a good testament of how good. It's a really good prose, and it has that vibe that it's almost like nostalgic, like it makes you feel like that old, fantasy sort of vibe, and I just love it. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the older, classic fantasy vibe, it's funny because I've been reading so many like grimdark stories and so many stories that basically flip the fantasy tropes. I remember me and Daniel, our other friend in the House of Dragons, he was talking about man, I really want something that just feels like old school fantasy. And we keep hitting on things, that are new and different and really cool. But this is definitely scratching that itch of ooh,
yeah.
good classical fantasy,
Definitely,
and then
definitely.
The Twitter community for Wheel of Time, wow, they are incredibly welcoming. I just posted that I put something when the FOMO hits hard, because I feel like I'm missing out. So I just posted this, and there's tons of Wheel of Time fans that were like, oh, enjoy the journey. Oh, we're so excited for you and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that doesn't happen with most other books.
It is so supportive. It's such a supportive community, the Twitter of Time. they are so nice, and they just sort of like flock when they see, oh, is that anything related to Wheel of Time? But in a good way, not in a, And that's good as well, because in fantasy there is this stupid tendency of being gatekeepery about everything, and it's like, oh, you're starting Wheel of Time now. Oh, get off this space. I love the fact that anyone that is starting the Wheel of Time, everyone is like, oh, come along for the journey. I'm happy you joined, and that's just so heartwarming.
That's the worst, when people are trying to gatekeep like other fans out. Like, are you a real fantasy fan? Well, have you read this, and this, and recite the entirety of Lord of the Rings right now? It's
Go.
just like, relax. Like, we're all just fans enjoying.
Oh,
fantasy.
are you a fantasy fan? Well, recite the Lord of the Rings in Elvish now.
Oh no. Or like Daniel Green with his what language do your trees speak?
Yeah. That's a good skit.
All these little pretentious things. It's like, man, relax. We're all just having a good time.
Yeah.
That's what it should be.
Yeah. Whenever that happens, whenever anyone is being gatekeepery, I put myself in the mind of Pablo the writer, and I think, right, I wouldn't want my audience to be gatekeepery, because anyone that starts reading my works, I'll be like, fantastic, like awesome that you like to give this a try, go for it, and that's how I confront it. Like, why would you be snobby and sort of throw shade at anyone's way of accessing a medium or a story? It's just stupid. It baffles me.
I totally agree. As somebody who wants to write books, if I ever come out with a book and people want to read it, it's like, despite what other things you've read, it's like, of course, as an author, you'd want people to read your book. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. That stuff never makes sense to me. No,
yeah. I was thinking the other day, related to the Wheel of Time, amazing that we're sort of on track. I was, because the Jordan Con was not long ago, right? It was like a week or 2 weeks ago.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That is actually like a huge reason why I started reading this. Seeing Jordan Con and like missing conventions. I've been dying to get back to a convention and like talk to other people. And Jordan Con always looks like a good time, and I know the show's coming, and I'm like, man, it's just. And then you started reading it too, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'll just.
I'll do it. Peer pressure. Yeah, I would love to go to a convention, and I think that the only reason, this is how nerdy I am, the only reason I would like to go to America is not to visit, to see the scenery or to try, do like a road trip. No, it's just I want to go to conventions. I want to go to Comic Con, I want to go to Jordan Con, I want to go to Emerald Con, like all of these cool conventions that I always see on YouTube, and I think, oh man, I wish I could go to one of these. It's just a bit expensive to just go to one of those.
Someday, at least once, you gotta come.
Absolutely. We sort of have to coordinate and meet up in one of those these places. Maybe the House of Dragons can do a House of Dragon meet-up convention style. Yeah, I don't know if there are conventions in the UK about that.
If I'm not mistaken. I believe there's the London Book Fair, which is run by the same people that do that used to do BookCon. Now, BookCon was a huge event in New York for book people, but I didn't realize this until the other day. I looked it up because I was like, okay, well, when's the next BookCon? They retired the event, so they're not going to have it anymore. And so I'm like, well, that sucks. And which again is why I'm like, Jordan Con, there's World Con, and Jordan Con is another big one. So I better start reading these books. But just trying to get to new conventions. I think Publishers Weekly did a US book show, and they're going to try to do a live event, I think, next time. But yeah, I'm just constantly on the lookout for new conventions and things like that.
That's one thing that I really envy of sort of the fandom and the literary, the industry in the US. There is a lot of community building around fantasy or anything really. You have a convention for anything, and I don't think it's a thing over here. And I really wish that, that's partly why I started BookTube as well. And a big majority of my audience is from the US. And I think it's just different, like the way that fantasy and books are sort of experienced over there is different. And I do vibe with it. I just happen to be an ocean away.
Yeah, just across the pond, right?
Yeah.
I noticed it seems like there has been a lot of UK booktubers popping up, and I always wonder like what the community is like out there, because I have no idea. But it seems like there's been a pretty good relationship between like UK and US booktubers, like even though and Australian booktubers also, even though we're all the way across the world, and like even meeting right now, we're like what, 8 or 9 hours apart.
Yeah. What time is it over there?
It is 2:14.
2:14. It is 10:14 here.
Damn.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm hooked up on caffeine. I've drank so much caffeine today, so I am good to go for hours.
Nice. But that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
dude, we're sitting here casually having a conversation, and it's like we have these massive time differences, and it never really matters. Like, we still have all these cool connections. There's all these people. I regularly watch a bunch of UK booktubers. Overly Average Ben is another newer one that popped up.
Yeah, go check him out.
Luke Edwards, he's on the other side of the world from me. And yeah, I think that's one cool thing about BookTube. It's just all over the world you can still connect and talk about fantasy.
It is mad when you think about it. If you went back in time and like 30 years ago and you said, so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have an hour-long conversation with my friend who is in California. It's like, what? Video call? What is that? Like, what?
Like on the phone, maybe.
Yeah, like
but not like
that'll
you
be
can't
expensive.
Yeah, that'll cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, it is mad. Okay, so you mentioned before that you like grimdark, and I've had a question for you with regards to that. What about grimdark attracts you? Like, why? Let's start with, when did you start reading grimdark? Okay,
I thought you were going to ask what is grimdark, which is such a meme because nobody can tell you.
I mean, if you want to start with that, I actually don't know. When I think grimdark, I just think Joe Abercrombie. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's a good entry port for sure.
Yeah,
I think what introduced me to it, I remember the moment. This was in like 2013, I believe. I seen so my favorite color is green, by the way. Green.
Cool.
And that's relevant because I was walking around Barnes and Noble and I was looking for some new fantasy books to read. I was like, well, what's new? Like, let's see like what's come out recently. And under the new releases, I saw this green cover that was The Prince of Thorns. And then I opened the first couple pages and I was like, this is messed up. I was like, is this the hero? Like, the hero had just raided and pillaged a village. And you don't usually see that. Like, I've always been a fan of anti-heroes and bad guys gone good and that sort of thing. So I think Prince of Thorns is what started it for me. I didn't even know what the term grimdark was. I know I had a friend years ago tell me about Warhammer, and I guess that's where the term comes from. I
didn't know that.
Warhammer 40K. They say something like in the grim darkness of space, and then that's where the term
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't until years later that I started finding out like people called this sort of book grimdark, and I was like, well, I want to read other stuff like that, and so I started to. But yeah, it all started with Prince of Thorns. Just seeing it, just because I liked the color green and had green on the cover. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. What's this? And I was like, okay, I'm in. And that's
interesting. And that's the thing. And I've realized more lately how powerful covers are, and how the expression "don't judge a book by its cover" is complete bullshit, because you do. That's what you do.
We were just talking about this today. Literally, somebody in my Discord that I just started, they
Go and
put up
check
a bunch of books.
David's Discord, by the way. I'll leave everything. Everything will be linked down in the description.
But somebody showed me a bunch of covers, and they're like, "Oh, which one should I start reading today?" And there were like 3 books I haven't read, and I was like, "Oh, pick that one just based on the cover, strictly." And then she was like, she was like, "Wait, I thought we weren't supposed to judge books by the cover." But honestly, we do it all the time. A good cover can totally steal your attention, can totally, like with Shadow of the Gods. We saw that big ass dragon. We dropped what we were doing and we were like, we're reading that.
Based on just the cover. That's how powerful it was.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on how powerful?
No, I absolutely agree. And I just think that, and I was watching, it's a bit of a tangent, but I was watching, I don't know if you probably know her, Merfin Appear, a really big booktuber as well. She's got sort of like a documentary series on the industry of sort of publishing, going on to like interviewing actual publishers and cover artists and all that. And it's a very comprehensive documentary, very well shot and very well like narrative style. Like I am quite surprised that a booktuber just did an actual, like it looks like a Netflix documentary anyway. And she was interviewing a publishing house on how they do the covers, and I did not realize how exhaustive and thorough the process is. I thought it would be like, oh yeah, there's 1 or 2 artists and that's it. But no, like they do so many rounds of like, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like a concept design. They do concepts and then they do like several runs of them, and then they go back and forth with the author, and then they maybe show it to another artist, and then they have different concepts. And anyway, and it does make sense, and a lot of thought goes into how can we make this cover pop in a shelf in a bookshop. Like we need to attract people's eyes. How do we do that? And they would take like the book, like a book with a concept art, and put it in a shelf and test it that way. Oh, does it attract our attention? No, it doesn't work. And sometimes a really good cover, like a good powerful cover, that you put it in the shelf and disappears, and it's like, nope, we need to find another one. So what I'm trying to say with this very lengthy answer is that yes, a lot of work goes into covers, and so it should be, like, because it's important, as we've mentioned. Absolutely.
Totally agree.
What you were saying about anti-heroes is interesting, because I think there is a tendency, and I think I saw a comment the other day on Twitter, that for a long time, and I think with the rise of Marvel, we've seen the story of the anti-hero, the story of a hero that doesn't quite follow the norm, and is very human, is very bleak, is very I'm thinking Wolverine, you know, the quintessential anti-hero. And I think that someone mentioned it, and it is true for myself. I'm reaching a point of maybe anti-hero burnout, and I do want that idealized version of, you know, I think that's why I'm liking the Wheel of Time so much, because it's got that old, you know, that old, you will not see Moiraine going like, and then having a cigarette by the river and thinking, this is such a bleak world, and I'm a witch that has to. No, it's like everything is very regal, everything is very classical. I don't know how to explain it, but I think that's why I'm liking it.
Nailed it, I think, perfectly, because I feel exactly the same way. I think I read a lot of darker fantasy, just that's what I gravitate towards, but I'm very much a believer of the whole everything in moderation. Like there's a lot of other grimdark fans. I mean, we just because you like a grimdark story doesn't mean you don't read other stuff. There's plenty of people who read all across fantasy, and Eye of the World has definitely been a great change of pace for me, just because, not even intentionally, but the last like 4 or 5 books I've read have been super dark and gritty and just violent and gross, and it's like, and it's cool, that stuff's cool, but mixing it up and having that contrast just, I feel like, makes them that much better.
Absolutely. As you may or may not know, I am in the process of writing a novella, and the people that my amazing friends from the House of Dragons have offered to be beta readers. And I have to say, the process of giving constructive criticism and feedback is an art in itself. And I wanted to say the way that you do it is amazing. So my question is, have you done it before? Have you been a beta reader before, or in the past? Have you read works for anyone?
So I'm actually still learning how to read, and there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm mostly guessing.
There's like words and sometimes letters go together and...
Like, what is this? I have my kids come and explain it to me, and I'll be like, huh, how's that sound? And then they'll give me feedback, and I'll give that feedback to you. And just... No, so I used to, while I was still in college, I used to be a journalism major, right? And I was the chief copy editor for my little school newspaper, which just means I proofread and edited everybody's work line for line, every article, everything, it went through me. And so like I have a lot of experience just sitting down and reading things and kind of breaking it down line by line and spending hours doing that. I haven't done it for like fantasy books or anything like that. I've just done it for like news articles, which is a bit different. But yeah, so I have some experience dealing with like sentence structures and things like that. It was something I was passionate about until I've seen how little money copy editors make. And then I was like, well, because the thought was I can be a copy editor until I achieve my dreams of writing my own book. But my regular job now pays more than I would make as a copy editor. So I just said, forget it. I'll just
be realistic, yeah.
Push that, yeah. We must be realistic about these things, yeah.
Exactly. That is so cool. I did not know about this this background in journalism. So how did you get into it? Like, what is that what you went for to study in college? So you said journalism major, and tell me about the story.
I was double majoring in English and journalism because I was trying to figure out, like, as a writer, what would be the best majors for writing? You think English, journalism has something to do with writing at least. I wasn't interested in being like a reporter or anything like that. So I was like, but I was like, just stick me in the copy editing room. I'll sit in there all day, edit everybody's stuff, write things, edit it. That's my wheelhouse. But what I realized a lot of is I found probably more information, like as far as storytelling goes, just on with books on the craft of writing itself. And like as far as building tension, finding stuff like that, trying to write good dialogue, things like that. I feel like you don't really go over in your typical English class. You talk more about like deconstructing something and finding the theme and the meaning and things like that. And that's all cool and really helpful, and it absolutely adds something to your writing. But if I'm just trying to tell like exciting stories that can just stab people emotionally and make them feel something, I feel like it wasn't doing really what I needed. And then, like I said, I thought maybe journalism was a way to get paid until I started writing my own books. But again, didn't seem to be a good route either. So that's kind of how that went about, I guess. Yeah.
And you can really tell. That's why I asked, because you can really tell. I really struggled with finding people to read my work. That doesn't bode well for my writing, but it speaks more of the fact that my friends and family do not really give a crap about books. So they're like, yeah, you know what, I could read this, but also fantasy is not my thing. I just don't want to do it. And I was like, you know what, fair enough, fine. And sometimes I would come across a friend or someone that would actually read it. But the thing is, and this is very important, you need to find someone that knows how to give feedback and someone that knows how to criticize something with improvement in mind. Because your feedback is the best feedback I've ever had in my whole writing experience. I was going to say career, but it's just not a career. Because you really sit down and tell me, okay, so this structure, this sentence they don't work. You need to make them more dynamic. Use more ing words, and that being that specific. Yeah, like the adverbs. I use so many adverbs that you like. Any word that ends in ly, cut it, get rid of it, and it's useful because now in my head I recharge everything and put so many adverbs, and then I stop, and it's like David's voice: stop, what are you doing? Stop. And I've stopped using that many adverbs, and it has really worked for the prose and for the flow of my writing. So I completely forgot what I was saying with this.
That's okay. But just to piggyback off that,
yeah.
And cutting things like passive construction and was, and that's the controversial thing to say. Unfortunately, like I don't say any sort of writing advice on Twitter, because I know a lot of writers on Twitter will be like, oh, that's bullshit. There's no rules to writing, write whatever you want. And then people will pick it up and you'll be successful. And it's like,
no, it doesn't work
then
like that.
Those same people are often complaining like, why doesn't anybody pick up my book? And I'm like, just without reading it, I'm like, well, if you never studied the craft and you never try to get better at it, I don't know. But I don't think about it like there's rules in writing, because it's definitely a creative endeavor. The way I think about it is just you're adding tools to your toolbox, right? So like the thing about adverbs, like Stephen King said it in his own thing, on writing. He said, cut your adverbs. And yeah, you'll see them in successful books. You'll see big name authors using the occasional adverb, the occasional passive construction. But for the new writers starting out, like oftentimes people don't just sprinkle it in, like a little salt and pepper. It's usually riddled with it. And the sentence will usually come across stronger if you use an action verb or, active voice, things of that nature. It just sounds better, paints a picture in your head a little better. It's like, imagine the word was. Like, just picture the word was. Somebody wasing. It's like, that doesn't paint a picture. It's like, but you can imagine them running. You can imagine them doing some other action. I can think of more actions than running probably, but not right now. But it's like little things.
Actioning.
Little things like that. And people, I'm very hesitant to ever try to like give feedback. I only do it to like friends because sometimes people won't want to hear stuff like that, and they'll be like, no, I saw George R. Martin, there was some little passive construction maybe here, even though he's great at not doing it. But like, pick a random author and be like, oh, there was an adverb there, and it's like, yeah, sprinkling them in, that's fine.
Yeah.
But they'll use that as an excuse to do it like every sentence, and it's just like, okay, this is going nowhere. And just good luck.
That's the thing, and you need to stop that because I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know why I'm being so aggressive. Stop! No, I think it comes from watching a lot of Brandon Sanderson and a lot of writing advice, and I think that what I've got from all of that advice is that when you write and when you're first writing, you are alone in your little bubble, and you think there is a fluctuating feeling. So some days it's like, this is the best work in the history of literature, because how can you do this? It's glorious. And then the next day it's like, what is this crap? What is this unreadable, incoherent, stupid little... And that's the thing, you're in your own bubble and you don't know what you're doing wrong, and you just keep doing it wrong over and over again. So many times that I have had, and then I go back and read it, and there's like one noun and there's like 3 adverbs in front of it. Like, I don't know, I can't think of anything, but just imagine the most clunky sentence, and I've done it.
Or there's a thing about adjectives too, where if you string like 5 of them before the word.
Oh my God.
Like, maybe you're overdoing it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like just small things like that. But I totally understand what you're saying about feeling I'm the fucking goat. I'll be sitting there drinking a glass of wine, typing, listening to music, thinking like, oh, I'm crushing this.
Bestseller in every single country.
Yeah. And then you read it the next day and you're like, well, I could have did that better. That was shit. Or the total opposite, where like I will be typing it out and I'm like, this is garbage. I'm just getting clay on the table, just putting out crap, and then I'll fix it later. And then I read it the next day and I'm like, oh, this actually kind of works. And like,
yeah,
such an up and down writer. It's like,
has it ever happened to you that you write something and then you go back ages later, like let's say months later, and then you read it and you're like, there's no way in hell I wrote this. This is so good. Like, what is this? It's happened to me a couple of times and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take the credit, but I'm a bit skeptical. Did I write this?
Happened for sure. So I've been writing, or like trying to write. At first it was like, well, let me see, write something out and see how can I explain this to where it makes sense. How do I want to word this?
Man, I would say take the quotations out, because if you're writing like,
I
go for it.
hard agree there, for sure.
Yeah.
So I've been writing for probably a long time and not publishing anything. Just kind of like, my first attempt at writing was like 12 years ago, something like that. And I tried to write a book, and like I wrote, I don't remember how many pages. I got a good chunk into a book. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, so it didn't really go anywhere. But I remember I have it somewhere in a box somewhere. And I remember reading it like after like a decade, and just, it's so, on one hand, it was so just like emotional and kind of over the top, but it was also so cringy and just like, man, I really thought I was like doing something with this, and it's just like, ugh, makes your skin crawl.
I did. I can't remember exactly when, but I there was a contest, a short story contest that I participated years ago, and I was like, man, I'm gonna win this so easily. And oh my god, when the judges went, like, they went hard on me, like, turgid style, the author is trying too hard, very difficult to get through, this writing is extremely bad, like, I'm quoting here. I was like, whoa. And then I read it and I was like, yeah, they're right, it's terrible. I did a video on it when I read bits of it, and I've got the whole short story in my blog. Oh, it's terrible. If you read even a bit of it, I'm really sorry, because that is terrible.
You didn't have the House of Dragons to back you up and edit and give you feedback back then. Mm-hmm. That's why you see Maza, he entered that short story competition.
Yeah, and he won.
Yeah, and he won first place. I was like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so proud.
I was like, put a little assist in the stat column and yeah, out there.
Yeah.
It's just another benefit to having friends who actually like to read and write, which is great.
Yeah, I've been so lucky finding like a group of people that is willing to read my crap and like giving like good enough in their constructive feedback to actually improve, because you really need to be lucky. Sometimes you find people that either don't care, and they're like, because a really bad, like, people sometimes don't understand that good advice is not, this is really good, well done, because it's like, well, thanks, but can you tell me how to improve? Like, was the pace was good? Like, did the word choice, was it okay? Because when people say, oh no, it was fun, it was good, like, what did you get from that? So for me, it was good or it was fine, it's the same as this was crap. Like, it's, I suppose, not equally demoralizing, but it's equally useless, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't really help, and it's just like, yeah, that was great, and it's like, okay, cool, so I'm gonna publish it as is, and then it's like there could be tons of problems with it. And it's like, but it's another thing too. It's very, it's time consuming. That's why I'm like, I only will critique like friends' works, because if you try to critique like everything out there from every single person, it's like, it does take a lot of time, especially if you care about it and you're like, I really want to help this person get better. It's good to make friends that way, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Because when it's your friend's work, you give a shit, and you're like, I want him to be a bestseller. I want him to go out there and people to read this and be like, oh man, I love this. So caring makes a huge difference versus somebody you don't know and they're like, oh, give me feedback, and you're like, well, that was okay, cool. Like, I'll read a bit and maybe I'll point out one thing of like, oh, well, maybe look at this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, I wanted to go into another question I have down here is, I believe you watch anime, right? As someone that is not an assiduous anime watcher myself, I wanted to ask, what would be your advice for someone that wants to get into anime? Like, what would be like a good starting point to get into the genre?
Okay, start off with Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I think it's on Netflix.
And just spill water on my face, sorry. Carry on. Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Start out with that. It's on Netflix. I feel like it's very it's a story that's really easy to enjoy. There's some cheesy little jokes in there from time to time. Like, I started watching that with my 12-year-old daughter, and she was, laughing a lot because there's a lot of very, like I said, cheesy jokes. But there's some really dark moments there too, and so many cool characters that you will eventually care about. I think that's a good place to start. Also, Demon Slayer is another one. That one is...
I've seen your review, and it made me want to watch it.
That's another one. It starts off very serious. What is this? Okay. But that's another one that starts off very serious. It occasionally, like, there's one character who pops up who's a little over the top with like childish humor, where he's just like screaming really loud and stuff like that. But that's the only downside. The rest of it is great. And even that character has his cool moments. And I don't want to spoil anything about it, but I would start off with either those two, but there's also Attack on Titan is another one. That one has, I want to say, like, the least amount of cheesy jokes. That is a very serious one, and it's about rage. It's about one young man who's basically, his whole city is getting attacked by these titans, right? These giant naked people that run up, they'll grab people, rip them in half, eat them, just destroy them. It's so weird and jarring at first. You're like, these are just giant naked people and they're running over, so it's kind of weird. But it's so horrible, like what they do to his people, and he has so much rage and he fights back that it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, when I say it's not like I haven't watched it before. I have watched bits of One Piece, and I've watched. I
still need to get into.
And I've watched One Punch Man, almost the whole of the first season. But it's not. I don't know what it is. It's not. Maybe I haven't like come across a good anime that has not to say that One Piece and One Punch Man is not good, but like, it hasn't quite hooked me. Like, I haven't got into the... exactly, yeah. And I don't know if it's because it's a very different medium to, like, Western entertainment, or... I don't know. As someone that watches anime, would you say that there is a big shift in the way that humor works and narrative works and that kind of thing?
I'd say just the way emotions are actually brought in. Like, My Hero Academia is another one. Just super emotional. Like, I feel like that's one thing that anime does really well, that I would like to infuse into my own stories. It is just this, it seems like every other scene is just packed. Like, every climax is so emotional. And the way they work with emotion is just different, I guess. I feel like your typical Western stuff, they'll hit on an emotional moment once in a while, but it's never as often as anime. And then I think as somebody who hasn't watched One Piece yet, like, it's on the list, I'll get to it eventually, but that's probably, I don't want to get, I'll probably get attacked for saying it, but I probably wouldn't start there just because of how long it is.
Yeah.
There's still, it's like years and years and years of content. It's like,
it's still ongoing, isn't it? It's still out. And I remember watching episodes like 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I would start there. I'd probably wait until like you get more used to the style and start with the smaller series and then work your way up, is just what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Cool. So I'll start with Full Metal Alchemist. I've heard of it. When you say Brotherhood, is it like a different editions or like, yeah, okay.
I guess the first one that they started, I think, takes place before the manga, if I'm not mistaken, and then Brotherhood actually takes from the manga itself, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That's the good one you want to stick with.
All right. Got it. Okay. I want to take some time now. It's just popped in my head. I want to take some time to talk about Dune. Because I know that you went to see the... I'm so jealous. You went to see the... Is it the first 10 minutes or was it like a split? I haven't watched your video yet. Well, you explain it. You've got an exclusive here on my channel.
I'll just wait here and you could go check out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so...
So, yeah, they say it's the first 10 minutes, but it shows like 4 different scenes that take place around the movie. They're not all in the beginning. And I think the first one starts off with like Zendaya. She's doing a voiceover and it's showing the desert, which is filled with all this spice, which is what they fight over in Dune. Spice rules the universe space, the most valuable thing. And then it shows another scene where you jump to our main protagonist, I guess, Paul Atreides, and his mom's sitting at the table and she's telling him, or he's telling her, can you pass me a glass of water? And she is like, no, command me. I'm like, what? And she's like, no, command me. And so he's like, he doesn't want to do it, but then he uses his commanding voice and all you hear is bass and you see his mouth move. And then a few seconds later, you'll hear like this weird distorted voice saying, you know, like, give me the water. And then his mom looks almost possessed and she grabs the water and starts to hand it to him. And then she kind of snaps out of it and is like, you almost did it. And then, so he has some kind of telepathy or some kind of ability to control people. And then it jumps to another scene where it shows the earthworm. And they're like coming down and they see a harvester, which is like what is harvesting the spice from the sand. And here comes a giant earthworm monster thing. And then they're getting closer and closer and they try to rescue the people in the harvester because there's a machine that comes down to try to save them, but of course it breaks down. And then you eventually see like all the sand shake and it all fall in. And watching this in IMAX, I feel like, I don't know if they have IMAX over there. I assume they do.
Maybe it's not really common. Maybe down in London. Probably down in London. Yeah.
I would say you should go see this in IMAX, but if it's nowhere near you, what are you gonna do?
I mean, for June, I might even contemplate going to London to watch it on IMAX.
It might be worth it. But seeing that giant worm in IMAX is crazy. It'll blow you away. Like, I had chills. But yeah, seeing that.
No, I was just going to say, that's one of the first scenes in the book as well. Like, that I have read of Dune, okay? I know I haven't finished, but that I know, that harvester scene. And I was watching the trailer, and it's so good. Everything about it looks epic.
It does. And Hans Zimmer literally created new instruments just to play for this movie. Because he said his only gripe basically with Star Wars was that we have all these different cultures and civilizations all across the galaxy and they're all playing the same instruments. That doesn't make sense to me, so I'm gonna just make people on this planet will maybe have this instrument, people on this, just to mix it up. And I thought that was really cool. And then just as a personal thing, when I was there, because it was in San Francisco, I had gotten tickets for this thing and I saw Quinn's Ideas, a massive science fiction booktuber. He was like, oh, I'm going to this thing in San Francisco. If you're there, come say hi. And he put that on Twitter and I was like, oh shit, I'm going to that. Like, yes, I will definitely go there and say hi. And I saw him and another YouTuber named James who makes science fiction and fantasy music. And I saw them there. I went with my brother. And it's always funny trying to meet, like, I say always, this is the only time I've ever met like another booktuber in real life. Like, yeah, it's always like
the time. I do it all the time.
It's funny because like I didn't see him at first when I walked in, but then when we walked out, we saw them walk out And I was like, oh, I told my brother, I was like, well, let's wait, and I want to say hi at least.
Yeah.
But then they didn't walk the way we were going. They went to like the bathroom or something, and I was like, oh, do we linger? I was like, should we just stand here? And he's like, well,
It's a bit awkward, isn't it?
wait a minute. And so we wait. My brother, who's like, he wants to become an actor. He has a very outgoing personality. He's like, just take some pictures of me, like with these posters. Like we got to do something in the meantime. And I was like, sure. So I was taking pictures, and then they come walking back out. And then I went over and said hi, and I was like, oh, hey Quinn, fan. I was like, is it cool if we, get a picture? And we actually talked to him for like 5 minutes just about the movie. And he's actually a super chill guy, really cool people. You never know what to expect, right? You don't know if they're gonna be like, like don't talk to me and stuff, but dude was super friendly. So that was cool.
That's really cool. So bless you. Well, I don't know if that was a sneeze, but never mind. What was I saying? Completely forgot what I was saying. No, oh yeah, Dune. Basically, Dune is I'm so excited for it.
Dune looks cool.
Yep, exactly. Dune looks amazing. Okay, yeah. So I was going to ask you, and I know it's all mismatched, but I forgot to ask you when we were talking about writing. You did mention when you were talking about anime about finding, like, sometimes you want to infuse, like, you see something in let's say a film or anime or something, and you want to incorporate it to your writing. Have you ever found a tonal shift in your, like, maybe? Because it happens to, I'll give you an example. For example, the other day I was writing and I was listening to Hamilton over and over again because I just love Hamilton. Exactly. And I was writing a scene and suddenly the characters started rhyming, and in my head it was Lin-Manuel Miranda just singing away in Hamilton. I was like, this feels a bit like a tonal shift, like this is a complete shift from the tone of the story, but it looks so cool, so I'm just going to leave it for a bit and see how it sits. Have you found that in your writing? Like, maybe it doesn't quite fit, but you're like, oh, but this looks so cool, I'm just going to leave it in and see what happens.
Okay, I have one horror I guess novella that I put on the shelf for now, and I'll come back to it in a while. But there was a lot of weird stuff in that one that would occasionally pop up. And I'm like, I want there to be a certain level of cool shit just in there. I want moments where people are like, oh man, like years later, still remember that scene, like where something over the top happened. And I try to have stuff like that in these short stories. And there's been a couple moments where it just, I'm like, this is kind of weird, but I think I like it. And if it works for the story and I can make it work, then cool. If it doesn't work, I'll have to cut it. But I have like one full draft of that where I'm just putting it away, and I'll come back to it once I focus. Once I'm done, I'm working on some other stuff right now. But jump back to that. But I have a question for you also.
Oh, go ahead.
I know you have with the story you're currently writing. Speaking of like influences and whatnot, are there any stories that really influenced the short story you're currently working on? Influences, right. I wanted to, for this novella, I wanted to give it, because I am doing it as part of my medical degree, I wanted it to be medicine heavy, but not too overbearing. I know that in the first chapter I went a bit too ham on the medical side of things, and I've toned it down a bit, but I did want it to be, basically, the thing I need to change is how the reader, like a non-medical reader, can enjoy it as well, because I can see a medical student enjoying it, but the thing is, I've been studying this shit for 4 years, and like in my head everyone knows what the posterior branch of the radial nerve is, and it's like, what are you talking about? So I need to tone it down, but I'm digressing. So basically, influences. I want it sort of like Grey's Anatomy, right? Like a medical drama incorporated into fantasy. And I think in terms of the fantasy side of things, my biggest influence has to be Sanderson. I want it, I don't have time to craft a magic system as
potent and flawless as Sanderson, but I wanted a magic system with rules and with limitations, and I just didn't want someone doing that and then things happen. I wanted it to be a really strong relation with language, and how language and different dialects of the language relate to how the effects of magic works. But you cannot do it. You can't just do it. Like, there's an energy, and you have to respect that. And there's channeling, and there's like things to amplify, and so that I wanted that to be respected. Again, another very long answer to your question. I would say Grey's Anatomy plus Sanderson plus maybe some historical fiction. There's some politics there, so maybe Game of Thrones, Sanderson, and Grey's Anatomy, all mashed up.
Boom! There's your blurb. That's right.
There you go. There you go. If you like Grey's Anatomy and Game of Thrones and Sanderson,
you did it. That's cool that you bring up Grey's Anatomy. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Shonda Rhimes is the showrunner, was the writer creator for that one.
Yeah.
Have you seen? She has a master class for like television writing.
Oh, I haven't. I've seen ads on YouTube.
Yeah, those are actually really cool. They're like totally supplemental. Like, one of those classes isn't going to make you from like never writing before to the greatest writer ever, you know.
Yeah.
But they're totally like, will make you a little better, I think. She has a lot of great tips on just like writing and keeping interest, like having people like not look away and stuff. And yeah, that was a very vague thing to say, but her masterclass was pretty cool. And she's a great writer, creator.
There's 3 from the ads that I get on YouTube. There's 3 masterclasses that I want to watch. There's a Neil Gaiman one that I really want to watch.
Really cool.
Have you watched it?
Yeah.
I want to watch that one.
I think actually, mistaken. No, let's see. I thought I had it with me, but I have a different person. But a lot of them I printed out like their notes and things like that to study. Neil Gaiman's, I can hear that dude talk about anything. I mean, it's great that it happened to be about writing. He's just such a good storyteller.
And the fact that you can write to that level and you can narrate to that level, it's just, you are storytelling like it's the embodiment of storytelling in every format. It's just amazing. But also Good Omens, like also in show for like that guy, everything he touches is gold. Anyway, I want to watch that. I want to watch the one Margaret Atwood. Yeah, the Handmaid. And I now have to watch Shonda Rhimes one.
Oh, you know who I'd recommend though? That probably hasn't been shot to you. God, what is his name? Dennis Brown? Is it Dennis Brown?
What? Do I know any of the work?
Yeah, he's the one that wrote. God, let me see. Masterclass.
Quick Google
Sorry,
that.
I'm just trying to.
No, it's cool.
I have the computer right here, so I'm like, why not?
No, you might. Yeah. We live in the age of information, after all.
Yeah, I can pull it up right now and tell you. Yeah. There's 2 of them that were really good on conflict and tension. Dan Brown. So he wrote.
Oh, of course, Dan Brown. Yes.
Yeah, the super famous book about
Da Vinci
Jesus.
Code and angels and demons and all that. Very commercial.
And then another one, David Baldacci. He writes a lot of mystery and thriller stuff. Those 2 were probably some of my favorite for actual like genuine writing a scene and trying to make it better and ramp up the tension. Yeah, those 2.
I'm going to check them out. I'll probably what I'm going to do. I think is after I've done this. Pardon me, reflux. Sidebar: we went to this really nice smokehouse and had amazing ribs and steaks, and I've got the whole reflux going on. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so I want to finish the novella and then sit down and watch all of these things, all of this storytelling classes, this master classes and all that, really build up my arsenal, stepping away from it and then looking at it with fresh eyes and having a second pass with like a new ways of writing. So I think that's what I'm going to do before I carry on with the editing process. Yeah. Cool. David, thank you very much for coming. It's been, and I can't believe I'm wrapping it up because we could just talk for hours and hours. Thank you very much for coming on the third episode of the Pseudopodcast. And I will leave all of his stuff down below. Your homework is to go and check them out. And, well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Pablo. It's a good time as always. That felt like 5 minutes, and I think we recorded an hour and a half of footage.
Yeah. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next one.